right, welcome back here to Edge Radio on 99.3 FM. This is me, Mothership, and we're at episode 100 already. As you know, we look at how media can shape our understanding of the world around us on this show. We're streaming on edgeradio.org.au, as well as exploring the brave new world in a way of YouTube and Twitch via streaming on those channels as well, with a bit of video radio there. You can find us by just searching Media Mothership. You can message us during the show on YouTube or Twitch, or SMS us on 0488811707. As I mentioned, we're boldly going into a attempt at a brave new world with the latest Marvel movie, Captain America: Brave New World. Let's listen to the trailer to set the mood.
You asked for me. Here I am.
You want to help me?
Is there anything you remember?
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Thaddeus Ross.
Whatever this is, Cap, be careful.
What do we know?
There were 5 shooters. This was a coordinated terrorist attack, sir.
I was a wartime general. Now I'm a wartime president.
Your inner circle's been compromised. Let me fix it.
Watch yourself. You're not Steve Rogers.
You're right. I'm not. Wait for it. We're on the brink of war. I can't trust anyone. Nothing about this feels right.
Captain America. You ever ask yourself, who's playing who?
Someone's been pulling the strings on everything.
You're under arrest? I don't want a variable out there that I can't control.
Stop!
Captain America, caught without his wings.
You like to play dress up and blindly execute the state's orders.
Don't say I didn't warn you.
What if this is a trap? You don't even know what this is.
Since when were they red?
You want me? Come and get me!
All right, so that's the one of the trailers for Captain America: Brave New World, the latest superhero film based in Marvel Comics, and it's just released here in Australia. We have, it's key characters that we've got here, of course, is the Sam Wilson character who's assumed the mantle of Captain America. For those people that have been playing along at home and watching other Marvel Universe material, it's in some ways continuing some of the character development that was in the TV series Falcon and Winter Soldier back in 2021. This brings it up to the 35th Marvel movie in this cinematic universe. 35. It's got a broad cast. Probably the most interesting actor to see in there is Harrison Ford, playing the notorious General Thaddeus Ross from the Hulk series. So in many ways, some commentators have pointed out this is really a soft, Incredible Hulk sequel or addition. The third Hulk movie, if you take Eric Bana's one as the first, then the Incredible Hulk, and now this film, completely absent is the Incredible Hulk, but we do have a lot of Hulk occurring through the gamma radiation with our main protagonist, who's the leader character from those that have read the comic book, the Hulk comic book, as well as the introduction of the Red Hulk. And so there'll be some spoilers in this discussion, but most of them have already been spoiled by the trailers, so we're going to avoid some of the third act spoilers, but most of the twists and turns of the first and second act are pretty much in the trailers already. We know Thaddeus Ross becomes president, and he becomes the Red Hulk. And so what's interesting about this film is, it's got a couple of genres baked into it, a bit of a kind of a thriller with a political twist to it, as Captain America character Sam Wilson is trying to track down in Act 1 this kind of illegal sale of adamantium. And there's a build-up around trying to get the heroes back together. There's some interesting developments within it. But what really interested me, I guess, about it is the transformation of the character of the U.S. president, who in this vision is Thaddeus Ross, who has a long history in the comic books. He was the chief protagonist against the Hulk. He's a military character. He's the general that had been trying to contain the Hulk or eliminate the Hulk through the whole Incredible Hulk run. In this movie, he's successfully been able to become president of America, and in a wonderful second act escalation of the action and drama, it's revealed that, knowingly or not, suggested unknowingly, he'd been microdosing himself with gamma radiation in the hopes of prolonging his life, to suddenly be triggered as he becomes incredibly angry into the Red Hulk, an established figure in Marvel comic book stories, and certainly considered the strongest of the Hulk variations that are out there. But it's fascinating to see the symbolic significance of a US president on film transforming into a Hulk. This idea of, again, a lot of ideas in my head that are going on, but clearly this great idea that it represents unchecked power and militarism, that you have this presidential figure who, is full of hubris, and this transformation into the Red Hulk, clear symbolism of what happens when you have someone in power that has unchecked control over this militarism. I was checking out some YouTube clips, and the first clip on the shorts for Captain America Brave New World is indeed this very scene of the transformation of the Hulk. I'll play it, no dialogue, but it does have some wonderful kind of special effects, sounds that we can imagine as he's there in the, front of the White House, about to delivering a talk to the assembled media, and then suddenly he gets angry. So let's listen to this short. So again, the crowd, it's a crowd shot, so this short is someone who got their mobile camera out during a trailer, and you could hear the crowd cheer as the president, Thaddeus Ross, transforms into the Red Hulk. So there's some interesting ideas around ideology and power that I think are coming out in this version of the Red Hulk and the direction Marvel's taking it in, which I think are the most intriguing parts of exploring it. Obviously, there's some kind of tension there, I find, at the heart of the film between this really sanitized version of American heroism, right? You've got Captain America, played by, giving that kind of identity of American heroism. And then on the other hand, you've got this Red Hulk character who's the US president, who transforms into the Red Hulk and goes on a destructive rampage through DC, which again is this flip side into this kind of repressed, maybe traumatic reality that he symbolizes, that this kind of, again, the sanitized image of American military and power of the Captain American character, who's strategically being able to be a morally good character that goes in and solves various conflicts and battles, but is morally true and won't kill people, most importantly, is I think, interestingly balanced, in this ideological fantasy by this repressed Hulk figure that we have there. So I think there's some interesting things. I mean, the critical reaction that I briefly had a look at online is very lukewarm to this film. The sense is it's not a great film, it's an okay film. But I think there are some interesting themes there you could dig into in terms of, I guess, the film's portrayal of that classic mythology of American exceptionalism, right? And particularly the fantasy of it, that, you have these American superheroes, none the more symbolic of that than indeed Cap exceptionalism, but you also have Thaddeus Ross, the character of the president himself, who has some absolutely crazy lines about, what was that we heard in the trailer, I was a war general, now I'm a war president. The moments in the film where there's international dispute over who owns the latest kind of rare substance, the adamantium, which had been discovered, and Thaddeus Ross sending America onto a war footing to secure it. So again, you have these ideas of American exceptionalism, that the world is in the betterment through what is the best interest of America. But then I think you have this idea that's presented in the film, if you want to read it a little more deeply, that this fantasy of American imperialism or exceptionalism does hide a deep, dark side. That aspects of American political power and militarism are like the Red Hulk. It's just a rage machine. It's just a unfettered, destructive presence, which is morally dubious, if not lacking entirely. So I think there's some interesting ideological fantasies that can be unpicked in this film. I think there's some interesting blurring between reality and fiction going on. I think some of the current media around Donald Trump, Elon Musk, are very much kind of bleeding into some of the readings you could make of this film today, as it's released in a post-Trump America, or post-Trump election America. So I think that there's some interesting kind of blurring of reality and fiction, while the script of this and the filming of it, would have occurred long before the election was determined. Nevertheless, seeing it today, there's some really fun blurring between reality and fiction I think you could read into it. Particularly how, again, I think this character, the Red Hulk, can embody this real spectacle of violence and power. Undeniably, I think the film really shines when you have the spectacle of the Hulk smashing the White House and parts of DC. That kind of spectacle, particularly because I think it's one way, if you take the ideology of it, kind of undermines aspects of the traditional hero narrative. It's a good counterpoint to the Captain America character, which I think's, the Sam Wilson character is interesting, but I don't think he's done any favors in this film. He's very boring. In a way, he's got a very undesirable job in terms of the heroic protagonist who has to maintain a very moral, traditional hero story, that they're exploring. I don't think his character brings much to the film. In fact, I would have found the film much more interesting as a conventional Hulk film with a kind of Bruce Banner Hulk as the flip side of a Red Hulk character. But nevertheless, I do think what it does do well is upset that traditional hero narrative of Captain America by counterplaying it with, I think, a much more relevant figure of a president who's the Red Hulk. So again, I think there's some really interesting implications about maybe superhero films still having some contributions to play into today's world, right? If you take a postmodern approach, again, that idea of the blurring of reality and fiction, there I think is an interesting discussion about what the superhero brings to this. If the superhero is dead, I mean, I think the kind of lack of the Captain America character to really be an interesting character in this film, given that's the film's literally called Captain America, kind of suggests to me a death of the superhero in this film. And if anything, a more interesting narrative undermining that traditional hero narrative where the Red Hulk is this kind of hyper-real spectacle of violence and power, which I think does feed more directly into probably the nervousness, concerns, and anxiety people have towards America and its president today. I think there's some interesting ideas about the, I'm drawn back to the Red Hulk. I do think that the way in which he represents, I think, an inherent contradiction between the kind of America as a capitalist power structure. And, maybe you could go hardcore Marxist on it and say that the moment at which Harrison Ford, who'd previously played a president's Air Force One, this kind of aspirational, myth of American exceptionalism figure, in this film, I think it's a wonderful counterpoint to that, where, clearly. This character is inherently unstable and is building basically a superhero industrial complex. If you take that military industrial complex reality of America and layer on top of it a superhero story, and then you have a president himself who is deceptively engaged in building a superhero industrial complex to better America, and himself, again, unknowingly, it seems it's suggested in the film, becoming a Hulk. I think there's quite an interesting contradiction which you could dig into in this film. Again, if we're going to explore the Red Hulk further, fascinating moments in which you see the Red Hulk reflected in various mirrors, and that kind of awareness of the president, Harrison Ford, played by Harrison Ford, seeing himself as a monstrous object. That there's moments, and in fact, to bring him out of the Hulk stage, it's very much a dialogue of trying to rehumanize him, trying to get him to escape the kind of, I guess, deepest fear and anxiety he has. And again, it's why I think this film, the most interesting thing about this film is Harrison Ford's performance and the character of Red Hulk that he's allowed to emote through. It's the fears and anxieties that the U.S. president, Thaddeus Ross, has in terms of, his own power. That is, he says the reason he started taking these pills that turn him into the Hulk is he was about to die. And so anxiety and fear about his own mortality. But then in an existential crisis, I think that could be laid on top of what fears and anxiety is projected onto American power, American militarism, American identity. I think there's a nice one-to-one match in some ways between the choices Thaddeus Ross is making as he's going into the president. And in fact, again, another layering of that was that, and again, the scriptwriters must have been aware of this, that one of the reveals is the use of this gamma enabled individual who, is the leader, who has, his brain has become superpowered, and he's able to basically predict things which are happening in the future now. And so, through probability. So he's like, it's an 89% chance that I knew you would do this. So basically, he's the puppet master behind this. But the idea there that Ross had used secretly this guy to win him the election. Again, layering on top of this postmodern idea of reality and fiction, where this fiction blurs into what we know of the reality of, the use of the various social media networks in the first Trump victory. The idea that various uses of social media, and again, some of the suspicion around the use of Elon Musk and his money to basically be able to guarantee the probability of success. And so again, you could do some really interesting postmodern takes on this film. And I think, where it falls over also is while it's interesting to consider a layering of what it means to be the US president as manifested in the Red Hulk, who is basically a force of violence, a hyper-real violence, is a kind of psychology and cultural significance of what the Red Hulk means, right? I mean, and they don't explore that. That's by the time the third act is there, the film is kind of fizzing out a little, and I do feel like there's much more area to possibly dig into around that idea of the human and monster that it meant for a character like Thaddeus Ross, who had always been the antagonist to the superhero universe, himself becoming the monstrous other. And again, I think it's a much more interesting character than the Captain American character, which the script didn't give much to do, right? I do feel like there's not too much there. Apart from being able to establish the idea of the Captain America character, being conflicted and struggling with what heroism and power means that he has. So again, the Captain America character, much more cautionary, ideal vision of a traditional hero who is, that classic with great power comes great responsibility, the stereotype, right, which is what he's struggling with. Making sure that his form of heroism and his form of power, and again, one of the points developed and hit hard throughout the film is that he's not on these super enhancement steroids, which are turning people into Red Hulks, which are turning the previous Captain Americas into who they are. That Sam Wilson's version of Captain America is not on the juice, right? He's fully human. So again, it's trying to set up a more morally stable and strong view of heroism and power. So yeah, I can see what they're trying to achieve in this film by juxtaposing Sam Wilson's idealism with the Red Hulk, and particularly the vision of the president the Red Hulk represents, and the Red Hulk's kind of militaristic pragmatism, right? So I think there's a fascinating tension that's there if you go in with a mind that's wanting to engage around this justice and morality question that they're getting close to. But the scripting does make it really fall flat. I do feel that those moments where they suddenly change the scene to exposition and digesting the type of justice and morality issues are really empty of emotion and delivered quite flat. Even at the end, I don't think that idea of justice and morality really is finally wrestled with what it meant that a president of the U.S. became a Red Hulk, right? I think that the capacity of the film to hold these multiple and contradictory truths in a way is just more than it can hold. But maybe that ambiguity is quite interesting. I think that analyzing, as much as I'm kind of downbeat on the Sam Wilson character of Captain America, I do think it's interesting and well deserving of ethical dilemmas to be engaged with. All right, those ethical dilemmas aren't really translated in the third act around the repercussions of the emergence of the Red Hulk. I think the film kind of portrays a generous interpretation would be that it's doing its best to portray this existential struggle of superheroes who are trying to find this meaning and purpose in what Sam Wilson's reading as a very morally ambiguous world. And again, which is why the performance of Harrison Ford as the president is just delicious. It's Bryan Cranston in Breaking Bad. It's this kind of morally ambiguous character that is gray, that's struggling to do the right thing at times, you think, but then you doubt. And that's a much more interesting character to develop than what the Sam Wilson character is left with. I do feel that the main focus of this film is stolen by Red Hulk and the performance of Harrison Ford, which is not surprising. Is it enough to see the movie? It's not enough to see the movie just for that, sadly. The hyper-real violence is very satisfying on the big screen, but it is quite let down, I think, by aspiring to tell quite an interesting existential story, again, of this struggle between meaning and purpose in a morally ambiguous world, but it just falls flat as it tries to eulogize around this. I think it could be more showing, not telling at those points. That tension around, the kind of collective responsibility that's there isn't dealt with, right? The collective responsibility around electing Thaddeus Ross and the Red Hulk, it's just not explored, which I think is a much more interesting thing. I think there's some interesting, symbolism around the hero that's trying to be explored, possibly. The most interesting thing, again, is the subversion. I do think there's some nice subversion of the superhero genre that if you wanted to have some fun with this film, you could do, in terms of particularly a type of patriarchal superhero paradigm, right? You have the daddy figure of them all, Thaddeus Ross, who has daughter issues throughout it, and this kind of patriarchal daddy figure is the US president, and he's very much kind of, this kind of American exceptionalism, patriarchal figure who's throwing his weight around to the other world leaders and saying it's my way or the highway. And there is a nice subversion of the logic of that craving for power that then explodes on the screen as the US president becomes Red Hulk, right? And I think that could have subverted quite dramatically ideas of, the myth-making of American superhero exceptionalism. It doesn't, sadly, in the third act to actually achieve that. But, as an experiment, I enjoyed. The film has certainly helped tons by having this hyper-masculine Red Hulk figure. You go from this kind of aged, weak, kind of neurotic figure of the Thaddeus Ross president, played by Harrison Ford, into a hyper-masculine Red Hulk. And there is a wonderful, I think that's, again, you can see that in some of the cheers of the audience reaction as the Red Hulk emerges and basically just destroys DC. And again, layering on top of that some of the narratives of Trump wanting to drain the swamp. Again, you can't think, but in a postmodern sense, about the blurring of fiction and reality here, that clearly aspects of this fictional story are dovetailing into symbolic stories of today's reality. So I do think there's some really interesting ways in which this film, you can dig into this film, some interesting interpretations. But let's hear a little bit about this. So here we have a short 1-minute clip as some of the production team are talking about creating this Red Hulk figure. So let's listen to how they explain this Red Hulk figure, again, performed by Harrison Ford.
The fact that Harrison Ford is playing President Ross / Red Hulk is kind of one of the many pinch yourself moments for me. Well, I'm still speechless.
I knew he got big. I knew he got mean. I knew he got red. That's all I needed to know.
Harrison brings you in, and all of a sudden you're a part of it. Sculpting a character in a world this big I couldn't put a price on that lesson.
Marvel brings to the screen excitement, entertainment, a spectacle. And I thought, well, maybe I ought to get me some of that.
Okay, so that's the post-film promo piece with Harrison Ford and others talking about their kind of building of the Red Hulk figure. And again, you know, I do think it's fun to see this film for the Red Hulk performance, and you can definitely layer into it how the Red Hulk figure embodies some bigger, you know, collective fears and desires that I think are coming in today's world, right? Collective fears around what this level of power means within a superhero universe, particularly when we're seeing how there's a darker side to aspects of political power and militarism, which are getting played out. It could be done more effectively, but getting played out in a film like this. Particularly, I think, if you want to critique ideas of American exceptionalism, this film, I think, is open to quite a nice counter readings around how you have a very sanitized version of American heroism performed by the Captain America character, and then you have this repressed, traumatic reality of American heroism as portrayed through the Red Hulk. I do think there's a darker side that can be explored around this fantasy of power and militarism that often is associated with the US, both in fiction and reality. I think that this film is timely in that sense, in terms of allowing some exploration of some of the current news around what this world is today, where we have various news around the sitting president, Donald Trump in America, and Elon Musk's influence, and questions around what anxieties are here today, particularly with concerns around the type of kind of superhero industrial complex which you could dig into in this film, and the kind of inherent instability I think that's there. The fact that all these secrets and betrayals and the type of economic underpinnings of superheroism get all revealed in that third act, with the best manifestation of it being the US president, played by Harrison Ford, turning into the Red Hulk. So I think there are some really interesting boundaries which can get disrupted in this film, you could have fun with. But ultimately, yeah, I think in terms of it as a Captain American film, it's very lukewarm. I think the Sam Wilson Captain America character is setting up an idealistic version of a traditional superhero narrative of heroism and power, and the struggle and conflicting perspectives around that. However, much more interesting is the dialectic kind of tension that's there within the Red Hulk around questions of justice and morality, which I think that character braises in a much more embodied sense as he becomes this hyper-masculine, hyper-violent figure. I think that contradiction, and the kind of contradiction in truths, in quote marks, of kind of superhero, and particularly the American superhero, if we take that as a surrogate for power, militarism, and identity, yeah, I think that's quite fun. I think there's some interesting heroic symbolism in this. Yeah. So you might want to wait for it to come on streaming. If you have the money, jump in to enjoy some of the action scenes, and plummet the depths of whether or not there's a kind of postmodern blurring of reality and fiction, a la Harrison Ford's President Ross and the real world President Trump. Interesting thoughts. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun going to see it. So very enjoyable afternoon. But again, go into it not expecting a Captain America film that's entertaining, but go into it expecting a Red Hulk film that will have about 30 minutes of quite thought-provoking and vicarious, violent enjoyment. We'll leave with one last little trailer spot, And then we'll be going on break next week. I'll be doing a little bit of field research somewhere in Australia that I'll bring back. And in episode 101, we'll explore that ideas that I'll bring back in 2 weeks a bit further. So no Media Mothership next Friday, but we will return the Friday after. And I have a message just before the show's ending. So we've got a great message there from M. Varaldi saying maybe he wants to build a hero complex because he knows everybody has a monster side in them. And it doesn't take much to bring them out. Yeah, look, and I think that's, I mean, if we want to go into the kind of psychoanalytic dream therapy that you could sit down with someone like Ross and explore around the Red Hulk, I do think there's a wonderful revelation of maybe the unconscious desires we all have around wanting power and maybe a bit of heroism and some aspirational identity. And I think there's also fears there. So I do think the instead of the military industrial complex, the superhero industrial complex, can manifest some fun questions around, maybe our own unconscious desires for a bit of power, to be the hero, to have that strong hyper identity. Who knows? Thank you very much for that comment. So keep listening now to Edge Radio. We've got some cool tunes coming up, and Media Mothership will be back in 2 weeks.